The clippers hummed like angry bees in the nurse's office as 12-year-old Lila Carter's braids dropped to the floor, exposing the alopecia she'd hidden so carefully. Miss Helen Grant stood watching, a satisfied glint in her eyes as she urged the nurse to keep shaving until nothing was left. The teacher had chosen her target well, a shy artist whose soldier mother was stationed far away and whose medical condition left her exposed. A secret video, recorded by Lila's friend Sophie Miller, crossed continents to reach Lieutenant Colonel Grace Carter's phone. The school didn't know it, but with their one-day suspension and vague statement, they hadn't just shamed a child, they'd sparked a battle with a woman who led armies. 3 days later, when Grace Carter strode through the school doors in her crisp military uniform, the halls went quiet. Everyone knew this wasn't just about hair. This was about right and wrong. Sunlight spilled through the classroom blinds, casting soft lines across Lila Carter's desk. The 12-year-old hunched over her sketchbook, her pencil tracing a butterfly in mid-flight. Her braided extensions fell forward, hiding her face just the way she wanted. The braids weren't only for style, they covered the bald patches from her alopecia, a condition she'd had since she was 9. Lila Carter, Ms. Grant's sharp voice, sliced through the room. "What are you doing?" Lila's pencil stopped. "Just finishing my notes, Ms. Grant," she said softly, eyes down. Ms. Grant marched over, her heels clicking on the linoleum. At 47, Helen Grant had taught 7th grade for 2 decades and prided herself on strict rules. "That doesn't look like math," she snapped, snatching Lila's sketchbook. The class went silent as she flipped through pages of detailed drawings. "This is why your grades are slipping. Too busy playing artist." Lila's grades were excellent, but she didn't argue. She stared at her desk, waiting for it to pass. "And these braids," Ms. Grant went on, eyeing Lila's hair with scorn. "So flashy. Too much for school, don't you think?" A few students squirmed. Sophie Miller, Lila's best friend since 1st grade, gave her a worried glance. The morning announcements crackled over the intercom, saving Lila from replying. Principal Edward Lang's dull voice filled the room. "Attention, students and staff. Our strict dress code will be in force starting today. All students must follow the appearance rules in the handbook." Ms. Grant's lips curled. Perfect timing. She tossed the sketchbook back. "Stand up, Ms. Carter." Lila rose slowly, her heart racing. 24 pairs of eyes watched. "Front of the class," Ms. Grant ordered, pointing to the whiteboard. Lila shuffled forward, staring at the floor. "Class, this is a dress code violation," Ms. Grant announced, circling Lila. "These braids are excessive and distracting. The handbook says hair must be simple and neat." "Ms. Grant," Lila whispered, "I have a medical." "Speak up." Ms. Grant cut in. "If you've got something to say, let's hear it." "I have a medical condition," Lila said louder. "My mom got permission from the school for my hair." Ms. Grant's face hardened. "A medical condition that needs fancy braids? That's new." She turned to the class. "See how students make excuses to break rules?" No one laughed. The silence was heavy. "Take those extensions out now, or you're going home." Tears welled in Lila's eyes. "Please, I can't. My mom." "Your mother's not here," Ms. Grant snapped. "And I doubt she'd approve of lies." She grabbed Lila's arm. "Let's go. We'll fix this in the nurse's office." As Ms. Grant pulled Lila toward the door, Sophie slipped out her phone and hit record, capturing the teacher's grip and Lila's scared face. The hallway felt endless as Ms. Grant marched Lila to the nurse's office, her fingers tight on the girl's arm. Curious students peered from classrooms. "Nurse Clara Evans," Ms. Grant called, entering. "This student's breaking the dress code. She claims a medical condition, but I'm skeptical." Nurse Evans looked up, frowning at Lila's tear-streaked face. "What's the issue?" "Her hair," Ms. Grant said flatly. "It's against the rules." "I have alopecia," Lila said. "My mom filed papers." "Please check." Nurse Evans moved to her files. "Let me look." No need, Ms. Grant interrupted. I checked her file this morning. There's a general medical form, nothing about hair. This was a lie, but Lila was too upset to argue. But my mom talked to Principal Lang, Lila pleaded. Please call her. Your mother's overseas, right? Ms. Grant's tone turned fake kind, her eyes cold. Look, I know this is hard, but rules are rules. We need to remove these extensions for fairness and cleanliness. Nurse Evans hesitated. Shouldn't we call her father first? I have parental permission on file, Ms. Grant lied smoothly. This is a school policy matter. Unsure, Nurse Evans glanced between them. If there's permission. There is, Ms. Grant said. Do you have clippers? These extensions must go. Lila's heart sank. No, please, she begged. My hair. But Ms. Grant was already pushing her into the exam chair. Nurse Evans reluctantly fetched clippers, still uneasy. This is for your own good, Ms. Grant said, turning them on. The buzz filled the room. Everyone follows the same rules. With quick motions, Ms. Grant cut off Lila's braids, revealing the patchy hair beneath. Tears rolled down Lila's face as her carefully built shield fell away. See? Not so bad, Ms. Grant said, her cheer fake. But she didn't stop. The clippers kept going, shaving Lila's scalp nearly bare. Stop, Nurse Evans finally said, but it was too late. Lila sat, almost bald, staring at her reflection in a small mirror. She didn't recognize herself. There, Ms. Grant said, switching off the clippers. Now you're in compliance. Lila couldn't speak. Her body shook with silent sobs, hands touching her bare scalp. The cold air stung. Take a moment to pull yourself together, Ms. Grant said, leaving. Then back to class. I'm so sorry, Nurse Evans whispered, distressed. I should've. I didn't know she'd. She stopped, unsure what to say. Let me call your dad. Lila didn't answer, curling into herself. I want my mom, she whispered. I'll call your dad now, Nurse Evans promised, stepping out. Minutes later, Sophie peeked in, gasping at Lila's appearance. Without a word, she rushed over, pulling off her hoodie and placing it over Lila's head. I saw it, Sophie said, voice shaking with anger. I recorded some. My sister will help. That teacher won't get away with this. Lila stayed silent, pulling the hoodie tight, staring blankly. That evening, as the video spread online, Maple Grove Middle School issued a statement. We are aware of a disciplinary misunderstanding today. The teacher involved has a one-day suspension while we investigate. Privacy for all parties will be respected. No mention of the shaving. No mention of Lila's condition. No mention of the pain a 12-year-old endured from someone meant to protect her. Mark Carter paced his living room, phone pressed to his ear. The former Army sergeant had been trying to reach his wife for hours. Grace, call me when you get this, he said, voice tight. It's about Lila. Something awful happened at school. He hung up, exhaustion lining his face. Lieutenant Colonel Grace Carter was deep in a classified mission overseas, with limited contact. Mark was alone. Upstairs, Lila hadn't spoken since Mark picked her up. She'd handed him Sophie's hoodie and walked to the car, her bare scalp a shocking sight. Now she sat on her bed, staring at the wall, hoodie back on. Mark had driven her home, supporting her when her legs wobbled. He wanted to storm the school, demand answers, but Lila needed him more. Across town, Principal Edward Lang called an emergency meeting in his office, blinds drawn. At 58, he'd hoped to glide into retirement without trouble. This is a disaster, he muttered, loosening his tie. What were you thinking, Helen? Ms. Grant sat stiffly. I was enforcing the dress code as ordered. The girl was defiant. Harold Vance, the Willow County School District's lawyer, cleared his throat. Let's focus on damage control. The video doesn't show the haircut. We can call it a miscommunication. A miscommunication? Lang's voice rose. She shaved a student's head. Partial video, Vance said coolly. Her word against the girls, and we have the dress code to back us. Ms. Grant nodded. She claimed a medical condition, but her file had no hair exemption. Was there anything about alopecia? Lang asked, recalling a past talk. Not that I saw, Ms. Grant lied quickly. Vance tapped his pen. Here's the plan. We admit a disciplinary issue, say procedures weren't followed, hence the suspension, but avoid specifics. Cite privacy laws. If the parents push, offer mediation, counseling, maybe a class transfer. Lang nodded. Fine. Draft it. I want this contained by morning. As the adults schemed, Lila sat in her darkening room. Her sketchbook lay open, but her pencil stayed untouched. The brave heroes she drew felt silly now, meaningless. She touched her scalp, feeling the rough patches where Ms. Grant had been harsh. The physical sting was nothing compared to the emptiness inside. She kept seeing the first braid fall, Ms. Grant's smug look, her own helplessness. Mark knocked softly. Dinner's ready, sweetheart. Lila didn't answer, pulling her covers up. Mark sighed, heartbreaking. I'll leave it here, he said, setting a plate on her desk. Try to eat, okay? I love you, Lila. We'll fix this. But how do you fix this? He wondered, closing her door. In another part of town, Sophie Miller sat at her sister Emma's kitchen table, watching her upload the video. Are you sure? Sophie asked nervously. Lila's so private. This isn't just about Lila, Emma, a college sophomore and activist, said. It's about every black girl targeted for how she looks. It's about power. She hit upload. Done. Now we wait. By morning, the clip had 10,000 views. Comments poured in most furious, some questioning the full story, others demanding justice. Sophie texted Lila, but got no reply. David Lee, the school's art teacher and Lila's favorite, heard about it during prep time. Known for his bright bow ties and kind heart, he stormed to Principal Lang's office. Is it true? He demanded. Did Helen shave Lila Carter's head? Lang stayed calm. David, I can't discuss staff discipline. This isn't about staff, David said. It's about a 12-year-old with a medical condition humiliated in our school. We're handling it, Lang said. Handling it? David's voice rose. A one-day suspension? That's hiding it, Edward. Lang's face hardened. Careful, David. Your contract's up soon. Don't let your passion cloud your judgment. Are you threatening me? David asked. I'm reminding you of your place, Lang said coldly. I have a call in 5. That afternoon, Mark found an envelope under his door. Inside, a note. Check the nurse's files. They know what happened. His hands shook. Someone inside was helping. That night, Lila fell into a fitful sleep after hours of silent tears. In her dreams, she stood on the school stage, braids falling like leaves as students laughed, their faces twisting into cruel masks. Ms. Grant appeared with giant clippers, smiling. Lila woke screaming, soaked in sweat. Mark rushed in, holding her as she sobbed the first sound she'd made in a day. It's okay, baby, he whispered, rocking her. Daddy's here. You're safe. But they both knew it wasn't true. How could she feel safe returning to those halls? The next morning, Mark called the Willow County School Board, demanding an emergency meeting. After 17 minutes on hold, the secretary said, the board will review it in 3 weeks at our next meeting. 3 weeks. Mark gripped the phone. My daughter was attacked yesterday. We understand, sir, but protocols must be followed, she said. The teacher's been disciplined. I can email a grievance form. Mark hung up, furious. They were stalling, hoping he'd give up. They didn't know him. Online, the video gained traction. Local news covered it vaguely. Incident at Maple Grove Middle School sparks debate. Comments clashed. That teacher should be fired. We don't know the full story. Why make this about race? It's about rules. Black girls are always policed. For the Carter family, this wasn't a debate. It was their broken world. Far away, at a military base, Lieutenant Colonel Grace Carter received Mark's encrypted video. Her calm, respected by her team, shattered as she saw Lila march down the hall, fear on her face. The message read, "Lila needs you." They shaved her head. All of it. She hasn't spoken in 2 days. I don't know what to do. Grace stifled a gasp. 20 years in the military hadn't prepared her for this, an attack on her child. Within minutes, she requested emergency leave. Within hours, she was on a plane home, her face set with controlled rage. Someone had hurt her daughter, exploited their power to shame a 12-year-old. They would answer for it. As the plane crossed oceans, Grace vowed silently to Lila, "This isn't over." The afternoon sun cast shadows across the Maple Grove Middle School parking lot as Grace Carter pulled in. She hadn't changed from her uniform, didn't want to. 20 hours of travel left her tired, but anger kept her sharp. "Remember what we talked about," Mark said from the passenger seat. "These people aren't worth your career." Grace adjusted her cap, her brown eyes hard. "I know what I'm doing. This isn't about my career. It's about our daughter." She'd planned her approach on the flight. As a commander of hundreds, Grace knew outbursts didn't win, strategy did. The school hallway hushed as she entered, her boots clicking with purpose. Students pressed against lockers, teachers peeked out, stepping back when they saw her. Her uniform demanded respect, her face demanded answers. A young teacher hesitated, then backed off. A janitor nodded as she passed, a quiet sign of support. Grace moved straight to the teacher's lounge, where Ms. Grant stood among colleagues, coffee cup in hand. Grace pushed the door open. Talk stopped. Ms. Grant turned, recognition flashing, then fear. "Lieutenant Colonel Carter," she stammered, cup shaking. "I didn't know you were back." "Clearly," Grace said, her voice icy. She stood in the doorway, commanding the room. "I hear you've met my daughter, very closely." Teachers shuffled out, avoiding Grace's gaze, until only Ms. Grant remained. "I was enforcing policy," Ms. Grant said, trying to sound confident. "Maybe if you'd been around more." "Don't," Grace cut in. "Don't pretend this is about rules or my deployment. We both know better." Tension crackled. "I don't know what you mean," Ms. Grant said, voice weaker. 8 years ago, Fort Hamilton," Grace said softly. "Ring a bell, Private Grant? Or did you think I wouldn't remember?" Ms. Grant paled. "You can't prove anything. You were in my training unit," Grace continued. "Discharged after repeated failures and false complaints against black soldiers. Sound familiar?" "That was different," Ms. Grant whispered. "You targeted me. Because you couldn't follow orders," Grace said. "And because you lied about your black peers. Just like now." Ms. Grant set her cup down, hands trembling. "You can't prove it." "I don't need to," Grace said, stepping closer. "I lived it. Now my daughter has." Her voice dropped. "If you ever go near Lila again, you'll see why my unit called me the Storm." Grace turned to Principal Lang's office, memories flooding back. Helen Grant had been trouble from day one, undermining black trainees, claiming favoritism, threatening revenge after her discharge. Now she was targeting children. Grace's blood boiled, but she kept her face calm. Lang's secretary tried to stop her. "Do you have an appointment?" Grace didn't slow. "He'll see me." She opened the door without knocking. Lang looked up, annoyed, then stood. "Mrs. Carter." "Lieutenant Colonel Carter," she corrected. "You should have expected me the moment your teacher attacked my daughter." Lang gestured to a chair. "Please sit." "I know you're upset." "I'm not upset," Grace said, standing. "I'm strategic." She placed a folder on his desk, labeled, "Incident Report, Carter, L. Assault, Negligence, Civil Rights Violation." "What's this?" Lang asked, not touching it. "This," Grace said, "is what handling a situation looks like. My team has witness statements, Lila's medical records, and the permission forms we filed last year." Lang's confidence wavered. "Let's not rush." "A one-day suspension isn't discipline," Grace cut in. "It's a cover-up." She tapped the folder. You'll find evidence of Ms. Grant's history of targeting black students. This wasn't her first time, just her boldest. Lang's face darkened. You're threatening our school's reputation over one mistake. You threatened my daughter's dignity, health, and right to education, Grace said. We're not even yet. That afternoon, Ms. Grant sat at a local news station, mic clipped to her blouse, practicing a sad face. When the camera went live, she looked pitiful. Thanks for having me, she told the anchor. People need the truth. What's the truth, Ms. Grant? The anchor asked. I was doing my job, she said, voice quivering for effect. The school has a strict dress code, and teachers must enforce it. This student was warned about her hair. The family says she has a medical condition, the anchor noted. Nothing in her file mentioned hair exemptions, Ms. Grant said. This is being exaggerated because her mother's military. She's playing hero, but where was she when her daughter needed to learn rules? The anchor's brows rose at the jab, but Ms. Grant went on. I've taught for 20 years. Now my reputation's ruined because one parent thinks rules don't apply. Across town, Mark waited until dark to return to Maple Grove. The note about the nurse's files gnawed at him. At the side entrance, the janitor who'd nodded to Grace waited with keys. Frank Johnson, he said quietly. My son had Ms. Grant years ago. I know what she's like. Thanks, Mark said, shaking his hand. I don't want you in trouble. Some things matter more, Frank said. Nurse's office is down the hall, third door. Mark moved through dark halls, flashlight bouncing. The office was unlocked. He searched the cabinet for 15 minutes, finding a complaint Lila filed 2 weeks earlier. It detailed Ms. Grant's comments about her hair, calling it unprofessional and disruptive. It was signed, dated, but marked in red, no action required. Mark snapped photos, hands shaking with rage. They'd known and ignored her. At home, Grace filed complaints with the Willow County Board of Education, the Office for Civil Rights, the ACLU, and more, her military precision in every detail. After midnight, she checked on Lila, asleep clutching her sketchbook. Mark showed her the photos. They knew, Grace, he said, voice breaking. Our girl tried to tell them. Grace studied the form, eyes narrowing. Lang signed this. He dismissed it himself. They'll regret that, she said. The next morning, Lang called David Lee to his office. David, you're on administrative leave. Effective now, he said. What? David stared. Why? Disrupting the school, Lang said. Parents say you've discussed the Carter incident in class. That's not true, David said. Students asked questions. I told them to be kind. Your contract bans controversial topics, Vance said. Turn in your keys by noon. David stood, furious. Everyone knows what happened to Lila was wrong. And this is your response? Silencing anyone who speaks. That's all, Lang said. As word of David's leave spread, Grace prepared her boldest move. In full uniform, medals shining, she sat on a national news show. Lieutenant Colonel Carter, what happened to your daughter? The anchor asked. My daughter Lila has alopecia, causing hair loss, Grace said, looking at the camera. She wears extensions to protect her scalp and confidence. Last week, a teacher shaved her head, claiming it broke the dress code. The school called it a miscommunication, the anchor said. No miscommunication, Grace said. It was deliberate cruelty and a cover-up. We filed medical forms. Lila reported the teacher's harassment 2 weeks earlier. The school ignored everything. What do you want from this? The anchor asked. Accountability, justice for Lila, and change so no child faces this, Grace said. I've served 20 years protecting dignity and equality. If the system won't protect my daughter, I'll tear it down and rebuild it better. The interview exploded online, viewed over 2 million times. Grace's words, I'll tear it down, became a rallying cry. Their phone rang constantly with media, parents, and civil rights groups. Mark logged each call while Grace planned legally. But they focused on Lila. Lila stayed quiet, eating little, her sketches turning dark, jagged lines, shadowy figures. Yet she clung to her art, spending hours drawing silently. By morning, protesters gathered outside Maple Grove, parents and locals holding signs. Justice for Lila, protect our kids. Sophie was there with her mom and Emma. Reporters approached, but Sophie said, "I'm here for my friend." Emma spoke up, "This isn't one incident. Ms. Grant's targeted students of color for years. Ask graduates." Social media flooded with alumni stories. She said my curls were messy and unprofessional. She called my braids ghetto and said I'd never get a job. She mispronounced my name all year, calling me Sarah instead of Sana. The pattern was undeniable. Inside school, tension hung heavy. Students whispered. Teachers struggled to focus, aware every word could fuel the controversy. That evening, Grace got an email from Chris Walker, the school's IT tech. "Mrs. Carter, the full nurse's office video exists. Lang told me to delete it, but I might recover it from backups. Can we meet off campus?" Grace sent it to their lawyer and set a meeting. But Chris didn't show. 2 days later, she got a text from an unknown number. "Tell your hacker to stop, or we'll bury him." She forwarded it to her military cybercrime contacts and told Mark, "They're threatening Chris. This is bigger than Grant or Lang." While Grace searched for Chris, Lila stayed home, too scared to face school. Her paintings were dark swirls of black and gray, but on the 4th day, she started a new one, a barren tree, its leaves fallen, but a tiny green sprout in the corner. Grace saw it and cried silently. "It's beautiful, baby," she whispered. Lila met her eyes briefly, a spark of connection. Media split predictably. Conservative outlets called it overblown, military mom overreaches in school dispute. Grace held a press conference at home, in civilian clothes but standing tall. "I'm not here as a colonel," she said. "I'm Lila's mom." She listed evidence, medical forms, Lila's ignored complaint, the school's lies. "This is what any parent would do. My training just makes me thorough. If that scares some people, they should ask why." She ended. "If your child faced this, don't stay silent. Contact us. Our voices together are strong." The next day, Superintendent Daniel Brooks held a press conference, announcing a task force to review dress codes and discipline. "Ms. Grant is on paid leave," he said, dodging questions about the shaving. Grace, watching, scoffed. "Optics, not justice," she told Mark. "They want this to fade." "Maybe we should consider private school," Mark said. "A fresh start for Lila. You want to run?" Grace asked, surprised. "I want our daughter back," Mark said, voice breaking. "The girl who laughed, who talked." "And the next girl?" Grace challenged. "The next kid Grant or Lang targets. If we leave, how many more suffer?" "That's not fair," Mark said, angry. "Our job is Lila, not every kid." "They're not just ideas," Grace said. "They're real, waiting to see if someone says enough." Sophie interrupted with a text, "Found something. Coming over." She arrived with a screenshot of a group chat from Ms. Grant to another teacher, sent the morning of the incident. "Ms. Grant, that Carter girl's pushing me again, drawing instead of notes." Unknown teacher, the quiet one with braids? "She's a top student." "Ms. Grant, don't be fooled. She's been sassy for weeks." Unknown teacher, "Let it go. Her mom's deployed, dad's alone." "Ms. Grant, no, I'm teaching this kid a lesson she won't forget." The timestamp was 30 minutes before Ms. Grant confronted Lila. "This is premeditation," Grace said. "Can we use it?" Mark asked. "In court, yes," Grace said. "Sophie, is your friend's sister ready to testify?" Sophie nodded. She feels guilty for not reporting Ms. Grant sooner. That night, Grace checked on Lila, awake with her sketchbook. "Can't sleep?" Grace asked, sitting on the bed. Lila showed her a drawing. 2 figures, one tall in a uniform, one small and bald, both smiling. Grace's throat tightened. "Is that us?" Lila nodded, then spoke, barely audible. "Don't let them win, Mom." Grace hugged her, tears falling. "I won't, baby. I won't." Laura Bennett's law office sat on the 15th floor of a Willow County high-rise, elegant with bamboo and civil rights photos. Grace and Mark sat across from Laura, 42, a top civil rights lawyer whose parents survived internment camps. She reviewed their evidence: medical records, school policies, witness statements, Ms. Grant's texts. "You've built a strong case," Laura said. "Most clients bring anger. You brought proof." "Military training," Grace said. "Document everything." Laura leaned forward. "School districts have deep pockets and connections. They'll delay and deflect. Are you ready for a long fight?" "Whatever it takes," Mark said. "Good," Laura said. "I'm filing a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the district, Lang, and Ms. Grant for assault, negligence, emotional distress, and civil rights violations. It'll get messy. They'll attack your character, parenting, even your service." "Let them try," Grace said. The next morning, Ms. Grant got a visitor at her home. Charles Preston, in a sharp suit, carried a briefcase. "I'm here to discuss your defense," he said. "I can't afford a lawyer," Ms. Grant said. "You won't need to," Charles said. "My firm's been hired by a concerned party." "Who?" Ms. Grant asked. "People who value traditional education and authority," Charles said. "May I come in?" Charles explained his prestigious firm was paid to defend her, hinting at broader stakes. Ms. Grant relaxed. "They believe I was just doing my job?" "Of course," Charles said. "We'll make sure everyone sees it." Unknown to Ms. Grant, Charles's firm was funded by a foundation tied to 3 Willow County School Board members who'd created a staff protection fund to bury past misconduct cases. Laura filed the lawsuit, and the court set an emergency hearing due to the minor involved. The courthouse buzzed with reporters and protesters. Grace arrived in her dress uniform, Ms. Grant in a modest dress beside Charles, laying with the district's team. Judge Margaret Ellis, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, opened the court. "This is not a circus. We proceed with respect." Laura's opening statement was sharp. "This is about power abused." A teacher shaved Lila Carter's head, knowing she had alopecia, a condition tied to her health and heart. The school failed at every step, ignoring medical forms, dismissing Lila's complaint, hiding evidence, punishing those who spoke out. Lang's lawyer distanced him. Lang had no direct role. He trusted his staff and acted swiftly with a suspension. Charles defended Ms. Grant. She enforced policy, unaware of any exemption. "This is a misunderstanding, not malice." Laura called Nurse Evans. "What happened when Ms. Grant brought Lila to your office?" Laura asked. "She said Lila's hair broke the dress code," Nurse Evans said, twisting her hands. Lila mentioned a condition, but Ms. Grant said there was no exemption. "Did you check?" Laura asked. "No," Nurse Evans admitted, ashamed. Ms. Grant insisted she had permission. "Did she show proof or call Lila's parents?" "No." "But you gave her the clippers?" Tears fell. "Yes, my biggest regret." Charles tried to shift blame. "Isn't it your job to know exemptions?" "Objection," Laura said. "He's deflecting." Sustained, Judge Ellis ruled. Laura showed emails proving Lang knew of the incident instantly and told Ms. Grant to keep it quiet. Then Chris Walker, the IT tech, took the stand, escorted by a court officer. "What happened to the nurse's office footage?" Laura asked. "Lang told me to delete it for privacy," Chris said. "But that's not protocol. I made a backup." The grainy video played. Lila in the chair, crying, Ms. Grant with clippers, Lila's "please clear," even without sound. The courtroom gasped. A juror wiped tears. At recess, Charles cornered Ms. Grant. "The video's bad," he said. "Show remorse. Say you were stressed, made a mistake." "I did nothing wrong," Ms. Grant snapped. "That girl provoked me with her attitude and braids." Charles stared. "If that's your stance, you'll lose everything: job, license, maybe freedom. But Ms. Grant's years of unchecked cruelty made her believe she was untouchable. Lila testified behind a screen with a counselor. What happened in class? Laura asked gently. I was drawing after my math, Lila said softly. Ms. Grant got mad, said my hair broke rules. I told her about my alopecia and the forms. She wouldn't listen. In the nurse's office? She said she had permission. She didn't. I begged her to call my dad, but she kept shaving. She looked happy. The courtroom stilled. Why didn't you speak after? Laura asked. No one was listening, Lila said. The raw truth hit hard. Even the court reporter cried. Judge Ellis called a recess, visibly moved. Ms. Grant testified, coached to seem sorry, but cracked under Laura's questions. Did you know Lieutenant Colonel Carter before? Laura asked. Objection, irrelevant, Charles said. It shows intent, Laura countered. Answer, Judge Ellis ruled. We crossed paths, Ms. Grant said. Wasn't Grace Carter your superior, and you were discharged after failing and targeting black soldiers? Laura pressed. She had it in for me. Ms. Grant exploded. Like all these entitled parents and kids weaponizing identity. Rules are for everyone. The outburst sank her. Charles winced. Colonel Robert Hayes, Grace's former commander, testified next. Ms. Grant was below standard, he said. She targeted black colleagues, filed baseless complaints, and after discharge, said people like Carter would get theirs. The testimony recast the incident as revenge against Grace through Lila. Jurors' faces showed sympathy for Lila, disgust for Ms. Grant. That evening, Ms. Grant's deposition leaked. They should be glad I didn't shave the whole school. Outrage erupted, with calls to ban her from teaching. James Holt, a journalist, dug into the case. Why did a top firm defend Ms. Grant? Why did the board protect her? An anonymous email revealed a staff protection fund by board members Thomas Reed, Linda Hayes, and Paul Carter, paying for defenses in 8 misconduct cases against minority students, all settled secretly. Ms. Grant's fees were the latest. James's exposé, Board Secrets, Fund Shields Problem Teachers, went national. Other districts faced scrutiny. Victims like Malik Jones, expelled for his distracting hair, and Sophia Ramos, humiliated for disability accommodations, joined Grace's advocacy group. David Lee, reinstated after outcry, was reassigned to an office. Instead, he spoke to reporters outside school. I failed Lila. I saw signs but feared losing my job. I'll never fail a student again. Grace, Mark, and Lila stood with him, their unity a viral symbol. Superintendent Brooks called Grace. We offer $5 million, Ms. Grant's admission, and an NDA. Grace laughed coldly. This isn't about money. $7 million, plus a college fund for Lila, Brooks said. But we need it quiet. You're buying silence, Grace said. You can't afford my anger. She hung up. Lila's art shifted from pain to resilience. Clara Weston, a gallery owner, offered an anonymous show, Bare. Lila's 15 paintings chronicled her trauma and recovery. The centerpiece, a bald black girl amid burning desks, calm and strong. Every piece sold, photos going viral, touching people worldwide. Lila felt pride. Her pain was helping others. One morning, Grace found a threatening note, back off or regret the bench. It's specific, she told Mark. The board or judge. Chris contacted them, showing boardroom footage. Reed, Hayes, and Paul Carter laughed. How long will Carter last? She'll fold after the offer. Paul Carter added, if not, Judge Ford owes me for his lake house zoning. Grace sent it to Laura and James. James's article, Board Corruption, Plan to Sway Judge, sparked protests. Reed, Hayes, and Paul Carter resigned. Parents from Grace's group ran for their seats. Tasha Brown, a former student, shared a viral video. 5 years ago, Ms. Grant cut my braid in class, saying it was unprofessional. I reported it, but they ignored me. Lila, you're not alone. More alumni spoke, exposing Ms. Grant's pattern. Lila visited David Lee's classroom after hours. "I need to say thank you," she said. David showed her a wall of her bear prints, centered with, "Art speaks when words fail." Lila smiled, a spark of her old self. Rain tapped the courthouse windows after 6 weeks of trial. Lila, in a blue and gold head wrap, sat between Grace and Mark. Laura's closing argument was powerful. When Lila Carter entered Maple Grove on February 15th, she trusted adults to protect her. By lunch, she was assaulted, shamed, and scarred by one. This isn't about rules, it's about a teacher's revenge on a child for her mother's past. Ms. Grant ignored medical forms, Lang buried complaints, texts showed intent, footage showed cruelty. Lila lost her voice, her art her refuge. Her painting, What Remains, shows what was taken and what endures. Give her justice. Charles argued, this is about trust in teachers to maintain order. Ms. Grant's actions were heavy-handed, but she believed she had authority, unaware of exemptions. The district's lawyer expressed regret, distancing Lang. Judge Ellis sent the jury to deliberate. Hours dragged. At 4 p.m., the jury returned. "We find Helen Grant liable for assault and battery," the forewoman said. The district and Lang liable for negligence, emotional distress, and civil rights violations. Compensatory damages, $2 million. Punitive damages, $5 million against the district, $1 million against Lang, $2 million against Ms. Grant. Total, $10 million. The courtroom buzzed. Ms. Grant froze. Lang stared blankly. Their careers over. Laura smiled at the Carters. Justice was served. Detective John Riley approached Ms. Grant. "You're coming with me." The DA's charging aggravated assault and child endangerment based on new complaints. "My client's not going anywhere," Charles said. "It's proper," Riley said, showing a warrant. "Voluntarily or cuffed." Ms. Grant rose, shaken, glancing at Lila. Lila held her gaze, steady, until Ms. Grant turned away, defeated. Outside, sun broke through rain. Grace spoke to reporters. "This verdict says no child should face abuse from those meant to protect them. It's about accountability, ensuring Lila's pain spares others." Governor Elizabeth Moore announced the Lila Carter Act, setting medical protocols and whistleblower protections. Lang resigned, and David Lee became interim principal, rebuilding trust. Grace fielded political offers, but chose advocacy, founding a foundation for school trauma survivors. 2 weeks later, Lila spoke at a community art show. "I forgive Ms. Grant, but I won't forget." Her maturity moved the crowd. That evening, the Carters stood on the courthouse steps, empty now. Grace whispered to Lila, "You were always stronger than us." Lila squeezed their hands, looking forward. Justice wasn't perfect, but it was enough to start healing, to protect others, to turn pain into change. Sunlight filled the converted warehouse, now an art studio. A dozen kids painted, some focused, others joyful. Lila, 13, showed brush techniques. "There's no wrong way to tell your story. Your art is yours." The sign read, "The Bear Project, Art Therapy for School Trauma Survivors." Funded by Lila's Art and Settlement, it thrived on grants. Every Saturday, kids with visible or hidden scars found safety. Grace watched, proud. Lila's nightmares faded, her silence turned to laughter. A volunteer handed Grace a tablet, Sophie's podcast, Unwrapped, with Lila as the first guest. Their talk on resilience and truth gained a huge following, giving voice to girls of color. Maple Grove transformed under David Lee. The dress code became inclusive, training focused on sensitivity. The art room renamed the Expression Space, celebrating diversity. Mark led a support group for military parents, helping navigate school challenges. Ms. Grant's criminal case ended with a guilty plea, a suspended sentence, therapy, and a permanent education ban. The Lila Carter Act passed, ensuring medical dignity. Grace received a White House medal, her speech honoring Lila. This is for every child who felt unsafe. We'll keep fighting. The Smithsonian requested Lila's sketchbook for a Voices of Resistance exhibit. At the opening, Lila saw her words, "You tried to erase me, but I redrew myself," move visitors. None knew the girl in the colorful wrap was the artist. One Sunday, Lila woke to birdsong, sunlight dancing on her floor. She'd slept without nightmares. Running her hand over her scalp, bare by choice, she felt no shame, just a canvas for her story. Her walls, once dark, now held vibrant paintings, building on the past. Justice grew from Lila's courage, grace, and Mark's fight, witnesses who stood up, and art that turned pain into power. It changed the world, one brushstroke at a time.